alphabet. Sonam Drukgyal ruled as Desi for 5 years, during which Bhutan enjoyed some calm and peace. His rule saw neither serious turbulence nor remarkable achievements. The most notable proceedings during his rule were the exchanges he had with the British and Nepal, who were then at war. This is made in Nepal. Here's a book on Nepali. Nepali have different alphabets than this. Okay. The Gorkha War, or the Anglo-Nepalese War, 1814 to 1816, took place as a result of border tension, mutual suspicion, and expansionist ambitions, and resulted in the loss of about 1/3 of Nepal's territory around the Terai region to the British. During the conflict, the British suspected Nepal of persuading its neighbors to join the war, and particularly of instigating China against the British, which had established China had established a firm base in Tibet since the Gurkha invasion of 1788 to 92, and China was wary of British expansion into the Himalayas. Thus, in order to remove China's fear, the British needed a way to reach China via Lhasa, for which Bhutan and Sikkim were the best channels. Moreover, the British were fully aware of the close ties between the Gorkha rulers of Nepal and Bhutan. The patron-priest relationship between Gorkha rulers and the Bhutanese lamas, which began over 150 years ago, was still continuing. We see in the last year of Sonam Drukgyal's rule, the Bhutanese Lama Sangye Norbu, who was sent to Nepal in 1813 to restore the Swayambhunath Stupa, returned from Nepal having fulfilled the mission. Engaged in a protracted war with Nepal, the last thing the British wanted was for the anti-British intrigues to spread across the sub-Himalayas. It was very important for them to maintain good ties with Bhutan, and they even openly requested the Desi not to take side with Nepal. The Desi gave an assurance of Bhutan's neutrality in the war and confirmed that its friendship with the British was like one between milk and water. Bhutan was enjoying a brief respite from the constant internal strife and military campaign of a scale required to join Nepal and challenge the British would have been the last thing in the mind of Bhutanese authorities. However, there were minor territorial disputes with the British along the southern border. With British military support, the ruler of Cooch Behar took control over Maragat, an area in the southwest clearly ceded to Bhutan in the Treaty of 1774. The ruler of Cooch Behar produced a decree by which Perling, the collector of Rangpur, which gave Cooch Behar the right over Maragat, but differed from terms of the treaty signed by Warren Hastings. The Bhutanese failed to provide any written evidence that Maragat was under their jurisdiction. The papers, perhaps were lost. They insisted that the area be reinstated given the cordial relationship the British and Bhutan enjoyed. They used the regional political situation to leverage this. Simultaneously, there was also a suspicion among the British that the ruler of Cooch Behar may be seeking military support from Bhutan to oust the British from his country in exchange for Maragat. There were rumors of an exchange of letters between Bhutan and the ruler of Cooch Behar, and of the latter having sent his brother-in-law to Bhutan. It was never fully established. In the midst of war with Nepal, the British could not afford to have a conflict with the coalition of Cooch Behar and Bhutan. It is partially to allay these fears of Bhutan's dealings with Nepal and Cooch Behar and to resolve the Maragat dispute and strengthen the existent relations that British sent the Indian official Krishna Kanta Bose to Bhutan in 1814. He was accompanied, according to Majumdar, by Ram Mohan Roy, the Hindu social reformer and activist who was a luminary of the Bengali Renaissance in the 19th century. Krishna Kanta Bose approached Bhutan from Bijni and traveled via Sarpang, Tsirang, Kotanka, and Wangdi Podrang to Punakha. We do not know the political outcome of the mission, if there was any, but he left behind a very interesting account of Bhutan's state organization, administrative hierarchy, people's lifestyle, economy, and natural environment of this time, although one cannot take everything in his accounts without a pinch of salt. It is also available on the Internet Archive. Whether it was due to a communication gap or driven by a political motive, or perhaps because of sheer ethnographic naivete, his accounts are largely distorted. Perhaps his informants enjoyed pulling the legs of this visitor. Quote, when they fight with a Devraja or amongst themselves, they'd stand at a distance and fire arrows at each other. And if one of them is killed, both parties rush forward and struggle for the dead body. Whichever of them succeed in getting it, they take out the liver and eat it with butter and sugar. They also mix the fat and blood with turpentine and making candles thereof, burning them before the shrine of the deity. They eat the flesh of every sort of animal, but if anyone should eat the pigeon, he will not lose caste, but will merely be exposed to ridicule. There was no obvious outcome of Krishna Kanta's mission, but the routes he took and the report he wrote suggest that he was primarily sent to gather information about Bhutan's war vis-a-vis the Anglo-Nepalese War, relationship to Tibet, and about Bhutan itself. If there were to be military offensive against Bhutan, the exchanges between Bhutan and the British concerning Maragat continued even after his visit, but eventually ended in Bhutan's favor. Maragat was officially returned to Bhutan on June 14th. Oh my gosh, today is June 14th, 1817. Happy anniversary, Maragat. By the British authorities in Calcutta. Sonam Drukgyal resigned from the office of the Desi in the same year due to the ill health, and Tenzin Drukgyal became the 31st Desi. He was also from the Wang region and served as the Punakha Dzongpon and Gongzim, or chamberlain, to the Desi before he was appointed to the office of the Desi by the clergy and senior officers. Tenzin Drukgyal enjoyed a close relationship with Jigme Drakpa II, who had assumed the role of the Je Khenpo after the 21st Je Khenpo, Jampal Drakpa, resigned from the post in 1817. Jigme Drakpa II, however, did not remain long in this office as the problem he had in his foot deteriorated. Jigme Gyaltsen was appointed as the succeeding Je Khenpo. Later historians do not list Jigme Drakpa II among the Je Khenpos. This is like an official position that combines religious and political authority. Soon after Tenzin Drukgyal came to power, there was a rebellion led by Trelwa, the Pondop of Tongsa. We do not know what instigated the rebels, but the eastern Bhutanese forces once again reached Thimphu. The senior members of the clergy were yet again asked to mediate, but even before negotiations started, Trewal was stabbed to death. The elders of the clergy switched from conducting negotiations to funerary services, these being the two major occupations of the monastic hierarchs during the times of strife. In 1822, after 5 years on the throne, Tenzin Drukgyal resigned from the post of the Desi and settled in Semtongkha to pursue a religious life. He was succeeded by Chokyi Gyaltsen from Wang Sikot. Chokyi Gyaltsen started his career as a monk when he was selected to be the 32nd Desi. He carried out a number of cultural and religious projects, including installing a large gilded cupola over the tower and main gate of Jashi Chodzong using 5,872 measures of gold. and 23,000 measures of mercury. He also plated the Rapsal wooden frames of the Dechenpuk temple in Thimphu with copper and made a large distribution of wealth to the citizens in the country. Many other religious projects also took place around the time of his rule, although they were not directly his initiative. The rising monk scholar Shirap Gyaltsen renovated Dumtse, Dzarchen, Kagu, and Kirchu temples in Paro, and Jigme Drapa II expanded his seat and introduced its annual festival with 5 days of entertainment. The dance known as Chulche and the masked dance drama of the Stag and the Hound were introduced at the festival, along with the Raksha dance of Dorlungpa and Nongpa dance. Chokyi Gyaltsen's rule also witnessed an important change in Bhutan's geopolitical situation with the takeover of Assam by British India in 1826. This event does not appear to have featured as a major issue for the Bhutanese government, perhaps because the seats of governments were on the other end of the country. The troubles in Assam were not felt acutely. However, the change of power in Assam would lead to major political ramifications in the following decades. The British takeover of Assam was a result of the First Anglo-Burmese War, 1824 to 26, allegedly the longest and most expensive war in British Indian history and the first event leading to the end of Burmese independence. Ironically, it was a direct outcome of Burma's own expansionist policy which brought it in direct military conflict with British India. So Burma invaded areas of North Indian states and it reached Assam by 1817. The British takeover of Assam in 1826 ended the 6 centuries of Ahom rule in Assam and for the first time made Bhutan share a contiguous border to the south with British India. Prior to the British control, Bhutan is said to have a very active trade link with Assam, but nothing much is known about its relationship with the Ahom rulers. Most likely, a lot of Bhutanese traders and pilgrims went to Assamese towns, including Hajo, a pilgrimage site widely considered at that time to be the place where the Buddha passed away. British archaeologists were to prove only around 1862 that Kushinara in modern-day Uttar Pradesh was the spot for the final act of the Buddha. Thank you so much for listening. This is reading from The History of Bhutan by Dr. Karma. Bye!